on this press conference call. I'm Marty Irby, Executive Director at Animal Wellness Action in Washington, D.C. I'm also a former Tennessean and lived in the state for about a decade in Murfreesboro and Clarksville, and past president of the Tennessee Walking Horse Breeders and Exhibitors Association. And, while I lived in the state, I witnessed many abuses of animals that were just terrible, terrible abuses across the board, and things that we shouldn't be tolerating as a nation and that Tennesseans should not tolerate in the state. So we hope to bring an end to those many abuses. We've most recently been involved in exposing some of the cockfighting in the United States. And our president, Wayne Pacelli, you'll be talking with in a minute, went to Guam last year and discussed cockfighting that was outlawed by the Parity and Animal Cruelty Enforcement Act that was signed into law in the 2018 Farm Bill. He was able to connect with the postmaster and obtain shipping records from the United States of all of the birds that had been shipped to Guam. We found that there were a great number of birds that were shipped from Oklahoma, Alabama, and Tennessee. And we've most recently released the results of our Oklahoma and Alabama reports, and today releasing the results of our Tennessee investigation to you all today. Emily Lang has provided a link in the notes here to Dropbox, which has all of our assets, the report, press release, video, photos, and things of that nature. And you should momentarily, if you haven't already, be receiving a press release from us as well. And we're also joined by Senator John Lundberg from Bristol, Tennessee, a terrific champion for animals who's worked for many years in the legislature to bring an end to cockfighting, and we thank him for joining us today. So I'll hand it off to Wayne to go ahead and discuss the background on this and what we found.
Great, Marty, thank you, and thanks for all you've done for the animals of Tennessee. And it's a great honor to have Senator Lundberg, who has been a champion of animal welfare and has worked very hard to stop animal fighting in Tennessee, and we'll be hearing from him in just a couple of minutes. Thanks to all of you for coming and joining us. I want to amplify what Marty said and then augment what he said. Dog fighting and cockfighting are the most widely and severely criminalized forms of animal cruelty in the country. Dog fighting is a felony in all 50 states. Cockfighting is a felony in 42 states. It is not, however, a felony despite Senator Lundberg's great efforts in Tennessee. Despite the criminal nature of this, the fact that all 50 states ban the activity and that the federal government also bans all animal fighting everywhere in the United States, it remains an industry that is shockingly persistent in parts of the country. And I'm sorry to report to you today that it is still very widespread in Tennessee. Today, we are releasing an investigative report where we have all sorts of corroborating information to indicate that 9 individuals are engaged in major illegal trafficking of fighting animals, and not just to Guam, which is a far-flung part of the United States in the Western Pacific, but to Mexico, the Philippines, and other nations throughout the world. This is barbarism. Animals are placed in a pit with knives or ice pick-like devices called gaffs affixed to their legs. They're goaded to fight from a pit from which they cannot escape. They stab each other, they slice each other until one of the birds cannot continue. Cockfighters engage in a number of very dangerous behaviors in terms of interacting with bloodied animals, sometimes putting the mouth over a bird who has sustained a lung wound. In this era when we have COVID-19, and when we're concerned about zoonotic diseases, diseases that can pass from animals to humans, this is a very real threat. It's been a very real threat to agriculture for a long time because these birds can contract a variety of forms of avian influenza. In fact, California is just on the heels of a major 3-year outbreak of virulent Newcastle disease, which is a form of avian influenza. The federal government and the state have spent $100 million trying to contain it, and the origin was the illegal movement of cockfighting birds into Southern California. So this is an enterprise where people are training, possessing, fighting animals to watch them slash each other to death for their entertainment and for gambling purposes. And sadly, Tennessee, especially East Tennessee, has had some very notable exposés about this. 15 years ago in Conk County, there were two major pits that were infiltrated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Del Rio pit and the 440 pit. There have been a number of major investigations and breakups of cockfights. But I think what we're here to tell you today is that this activity is persisting, and it's persisting on a shockingly large scale. Some of these folks are literally sending thousands of birds a year to other destinations. And it's not just an issue of them possessing birds. In order for you to be a cockfighter whose birds are coveted by other cockfighters around the world, you have to perform well in terms of your own birds winning cockfighting derbies. So there are no people who just breed birds and don't fight them. The two activities are commingled, and you cannot have one without the other. You cannot have the breeding and the shipping without the fighting. So we are providing today to the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Tennessee a letter and the report indicating that there are 5 individuals in the Eastern District who are engaging in illegal animal trafficking activities. We are also providing a separate letter to the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee with 4 individuals who are engaging in illegal trafficking of animals. The details of their operations and activities are included in the report, which is on the Dropbox. Folks are appearing on the covers of global cockfighting magazines. They're pretending to be breeders or pretending to say we're just selling show birds or we're just selling birds for agriculture, yet there's no other reason for them to have these birds. They are showing the birds being shipped. They have Facebook pages where they tout their great successes at cockfighting derbies. They are selling knives and other implements, which is a federal crime. They tout the cutting abilities of their birds. And I think the background for this is that, as Marty Irby, my colleague, indicated, the United States banned all animal fighting in the country. Every inch. It's not legal to have cockfights or dogfights any part of the country. But there was some ambiguity about the U.S. territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa. That ambiguity was lifted in December of 2019. So just 6 months ago, at the very end of December, the federal law went into effect that bans animal fighting everywhere. Now, Guam has no agriculture industry, no animal agriculture industry. They don't have a broiler bird industry, which are the birds raised for meat. They don't have an egg-laying hen business. Those are the hens raised for egg production. They don't have a show bird circuit where people show off their birds like you might have a dog show where people show off different breeds of dogs. So we found over the last 3 years, after getting shipping records from the Guam Department of Agriculture, that there were 8,800 fighting birds sent to Guam. We traced those birds back to 71 exporters from the United States. Tennessee was the number 6 exporter to Guam. And frankly, it's on the other side of the country from Guam, so it's a particularly long route. We're finding that the Tennessee cockfighters are more briskly serving the Mexico market and other markets throughout the world. But it led us to Tennessee, and it led us to find 3 individuals, all of them in the Eastern District, who fraudulently signed shipping records to the Guam Department of Agriculture, indicating they were brood fowl, when it's abundantly clear that these animals were shipped for fighting purposes. That investigation led us to this subculture of cockfighting in Tennessee, and that's where we found a number of these individuals. In the report, we link to a Philippines television network called BNTV, 2 of the cockfighters from the Middle District of Tennessee, one from Murfreesboro and one from Springfield, appear in 8 to 12 minute videos where they tout their fighting birds and talk about their global success in the fighting industry. There is no ambiguity about these folks being involved in illegal cockfighting. They're making tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars in shipping birds all over the world. One Alabama cockfighter, we determined, was sending 6,000 birds a year to Mexico at about $500 per bird. So our plea is for law enforcement. The United States attorneys have a great federal law that they can exercise to arrest these perpetrators. District attorneys will have an abundance of information that we are providing, should take action to stop this activity in Tennessee. This is not the 18th century or the 19th century when it comes to gladiator-type spectacles for animals that we watch and relish them killing each other just for our titillation and amusement. And I'm just really pleased that Senator John Lundberg has joined us for the press conference. He has been the leader in the state legislature for 14 years on animal fighting issues and a number of important issues, other important issues to the state of Tennessee. Senator Lundberg, thank you very, very much for joining us. Thanks for your work to combat this activity.
Thank you, Wayne. You laid it out pretty well. A couple things that I just want to tag on. Cockfighting is not just two birds that are there. It's not just the cockfight. Let's talk a little bit about what happens in there. You have drugs that are being sold and bought. You have lots of alcohol. You have underage participation. You have prostitution. You have organized crime. It's much more than just a couple of birds fighting. And when you talk about the fight, realize that these are not just two birds pecking at each other. This is a very, very violent activity where they are just literally in a fight for survival. When you talk, and Wayne, you talked about knives and things like that. I want folks to understand about it. Cockfighters will literally cut off one of the toes of what's called a hawk. That's the toes of a cock. This is a long knife. So I don't know if you can see that clearly, but they put one of those on one. This is a long knife. It, frankly, as the cockfighters say, this makes it a much quicker match, but it's a very gory one because it'll rip open the insides of the bird. You'll see birds that have their insides out, eyes gouged out. There are short knives. So, and just there's your comparison between that and what's called a gaff. And that is literally a spike. And apparently they can put a gaff on 2 feet. So, and this makes more of a scratching and puncture wounds. As a legislator, frankly, I am deeply disappointed in the report. Not that you did it, but I'm disappointed in the findings. Things that I want to leave a legacy of Tennessee and our ability to recruit new businesses, strengthen families, allow businesses to grow and survive. This is not what we need as a state. This is not what we need as a region. And I have done everything I can right now to help eliminate this issue and this problem. And the call today also is, and Wayne mentioned it and set it up, we're asking those U.S. attorneys to take some action. And that is because I often, as a legislator, get people asking me, why don't you pass a law to do this or to do this? We can pass that law, but it's up to folks to enforce it. And that's the critical part where we need to enforce these laws. And that's, I think, the big message that I want to send out today, that it's enough of this. I don't want to be in the top 6 as far as shipping out fighting birds to Guam or in the top 5 to the Philippines. That's not what Tennessee should be known for. So, and Wayne, thank you for your leadership on this, not just this, but for animal welfare for a long time. I really appreciate it. Marty, I appreciate you being there as well. And frankly, everyone who is on this call today.
Well, thank you, Senator Lundberg. And again, I just want you to clarify, in 2015, you led the effort to pass a bill. It was fought by some legislators in Tennessee, sadly, to upgrade the penalties for illegal cockfighting in the state. I think it's a Class A misdemeanor is what I believe the maximum penalty is now for illegal cockfighting.
It is. And yeah, it was a vicious debate, both in public and behind the scenes. I had a lot of folks who said, hey, cockfighting is a part of our culture and they don't want to change it. Well, there are a lot of things that were a part of our culture that we don't do anymore. Frankly, for that, I thank God. So, and I don't think cockfighting is a part of the culture that most civilized people want. So it has been a tough push, but I hope that Tennessee will become one of the states that has made this a felony penalty in the future, and I will continue to drive that.
Well, dogfighting is a felony in Tennessee, as it is in all those states. And to me, and I think to other animal welfare advocates, and to anyone of common sense, there's no moral distinction between different forms of animal fighting. They're all equally gratuitous. And the cockfighting, as you say, with the implements attached to the animal's legs, adds another dimension to it. And we have seen time and time again that it is bound up with other criminal activities. Some of the local sheriffs in Cock County had been corrupted and allowed those pits to operate for many, many years. And we have seen major drug trafficking operations, as Senator Lundberg said, from other operations that had been exposed in Tennessee. So I just want to remind folks that, again, that was Senator John Lundberg, a Republican of Bristol, Marty Irby, the Executive Director of Animal Wellness Action, and I'm Wayne Pacelli, P-A-C-E-L-L-E, President of Animal Wellness Action, and work with the Animal Wellness Foundation as well. Marty has organized with Emily a Dropbox that contains the report, the letters that we have sent this morning to the United States attorneys for the Eastern District and the Middle District, and we've got some other resources available to you there. We also at animalwellnessaction.org have posted our press release, as well as our microsite, endcockfighting.org, where we have a picture of one of the people in the report, Larry Whitehead, who's from Talbot, Tennessee. He appeared on the cover of Cockfights magazine. We've got other folks with very, very detailed information about their illegal activities. So I think now, Marty, we should perhaps open it up for questions for you, me, or Senator Lundberg.
Yes. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Senator Lundberg. So if anyone on the call today has any questions, if you would like to just enter a message in the chat or raise your hand, either one, and we'll be glad to call on you.
I had a question. So you guys said that there are nine individuals that have been spotted doing these acts. So they haven't been arrested? Is that what you guys are saying?
Correct, that we are asking for law enforcement to take action against these individuals because of the abundance of information that we've collected, reinforcing information. And I would just want to underscore, and I think this might be confusing for folks, it's not just fighting that is illegal under federal law and under the vast majority of state laws. It's possessing animals for fighting. The federal law also makes it a federal crime to transport the cockfighting implements across state lines. It's also a crime to be a spectator at a fight, to bring a child to a fight. So what is really at issue here are these enormous cockfighting farms where they're raising thousands of birds for fighting purposes, staging fights presumably in Tennessee, but also all over the world. So we want, and I think this is a little different, many of the busts you hear about, law enforcement break into the fight in progress. And that's very important and very, very good that they are enforcing that prohibition on fighting itself. But we want to stop the abuse of the birds before it happens. And possessing these animals for fighting is a federal crime. No difference in the penalty, the felony to possess as well as to fight.
Are they all from Murfreesboro and Springfield, or are any of them in the Northeast Tennessee spot as well?
Yeah, there are 5 from the Eastern District. There are 2 gentlemen from Athens, Tennessee, in the Eastern District. There's one and that's in McMinn County, which is more toward the middle part of the state, but it's in the Eastern District for the purposes of the U.S. Attorney's districts. There's an individual from Manchester, which is in Coffee County, and then McMinnville in Warren County, and then Talbot, which is Hamlin and Jefferson County. So those are the 5, and then there are 4 individuals in the Middle District from Gallatin, from Murfreesboro in Rutherford County, Hartsville, which is in Trousdale, Springfield, which is in Robertson, and Springfield, Hartsville, Gallatin, and Murfreesboro. So those are the 9. And by no means do we think this is an exhaustive list, but these are the folks for which we have such solid information that we felt comfortable forwarding this information to law enforcement authorities. And while we have not yet sent it to the DAs in those counties, the district attorneys, but we will do so also.
Any additional questions?
While we're waiting, Marty, in case someone raises a hand, I just want to clarify the federal law. Again, we have 2 opportunities for enforcement. There's the state law that Senator Lundberg helped to write and shepherded to passage, which provides Class A misdemeanor penalties. Then there's a federal law that bans a wide range of activities. It's been upgraded 5 times by the United States Congress and signed, different provisions signed by President George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. It's been a bipartisan issue. Democrats and Republicans have gone on the record strongly opposed to animal fighting activities. And the federal penalties provide for each violation up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. So these are not trifling penalties. These are very serious federal crimes. The law treats them that way, and we believe law enforcement has a responsibility to enforce this law. It's not just animal cruelty, it's a range of other criminal conduct that is almost always commingled together.
And just tacking on to what Wayne said, one of our primary issues that we're working on related to this is that we have been pressing the White House, the administration, and members of Congress to help create an animal cruelty crimes unit at the Department of Justice. And we're working on appropriations language that would help us do that, and also standalone federal legislation. We have worked for many years, and Wayne much longer than myself, to get these laws on the books, and joined the president in the Oval Office last year when he signed the Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Act into law. And we have really had some great communication with the White House, and we're hoping to accomplish that goal as well. So if there aren't any other questions, we should have. Was there a question?
There is one question that's come in from Allison that I'd like to share. It says, can you talk more about the issue of this during the COVID era? What exactly should people be worried about?
Well, this is Wayne Pacelli again with Animal Wellness Action and Animal Wellness Foundation. I think the issue that I teased before is that we have yet again learned a lesson that most diseases that afflict human beings started in animals and they jumped the species barrier. And we increased the possibility of what's known as a zoonotic transmission by engaging in dangerous interactions with animals. What happened in Wuhan, China was there was a live wildlife market where live wild animals were being offered for sale. They were being butchered on the spot, and people were present with the fluids in the air, with the fluids on the ground. And when you have a disease that infects one of these animals, many of them stressed from terrible capture, from inhumane transport, and then the fear that they feel when they're seeing these other animals killed in front of them for consumption, that creates a stressed animal, and that allows for the onset of disease. So when you're mixing bodily fluids with people and animals, you have a dangerous circumstance. Cockfighting is a global industry, and we saw what happened in Wuhan, that if that had been an outbreak 2 centuries ago, it would have been contained. But with global transport and travel, that virus ricocheted all over the world in just a matter of weeks. And this is the circumstance with global cockfighting. This is an activity where animals are being illegally shipped from the United States all over the world, from other parts of the world into the United States, So you have the pathway of transportation to spread this rapidly all over the world. You then add in the fact that we have a history of influenzas that start with birds and jump to human beings, and you have a dangerous situation. Then you layer over that what's happening with these birds and the very intimate interactions that are existing, especially in a fighting situation. The birds have knives on them, they're bleeding. The people are handling the birds, they're physically touching them. They may be handling their legs and they may themselves get cut to have blood pass between the human and the fighting bird. And then I tease this issue, but if a bird is stabbed in the lungs or in some other part of the respiratory system, some of the cockfighters will literally put their mouth over the bird's mouth and suck the fluids that are filling the passageway of the birds in order to give them a little bit of new life so they can continue the fight, because they're gambling on the outcome. And this is, you cannot imagine an activity from a human behavioral perspective that's more dangerous in terms of the spread of zoonotic diseases. It's an animal health issue as well, because the cockfighting birds can infect poultry flocks. That's what happened in California with more than $100 million spent by the federal government. So we're talking about spending just a few $1 million on proper enforcement of our animal fighting laws that can save us from literally billions in costs in terms of the animal health, and it'd be incalculable, as we've seen, in terms of a human health crisis like the coronavirus crisis with COVID-19.
Any other additional questions? I'll give just a second in case folks are typing in the chat.
And just any, Senator Lundberg, any final thoughts from you while we're awaiting that, or have you shared what you want on this call?
I shared what I want. Thank you. So, and thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more, so just a reminder that the Dropbox link is in the chat, also linked to our press release with our investigative reports and video, photos, and other assets. And we are also available to talk to you if you'd like to talk further. My email is Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at animalwellnessaction.org. And I'll be glad to field any other questions to anyone that's participated in the conference here today. So we thank you all and appreciate you joining us and covering this issue, and look forward to really making some great strides in Tennessee to prevent this cruelty and abuse. And thanks Senator Lundberg tremendously for all of his great work and years of dedication on these issues.
Thank you all.